and welcome to Siska Stitches. I'm so excited, guys, like very excited to share this tutorial with you guys. This tutorial was super easy and you're going to see everything step by step. If you're new to my channel, I say welcome to the family. If you're an old subscriber, I say welcome back. Do click the subscribe button and also click the notification bell so you get notified whenever Siska Stitches post new videos. So guys, this is just how the waterfall jacket looks. As you can see, the stitching is very neat. Everything looks very clean and you're going to see how I was able to do this from start to finish. So guys, we can go ahead and begin the tutorial process. So I have my pattern, my sleeve pattern, my bodice pattern. I've actually done this in previous tutorials. I'm going to link it up in the description box. So these are the patterns I'm going to be working with. Like I said, I'll link them in the description box. So I'm going to use this fabric as the main fabric and the black one as my lining fabric to give the color blocks effect. So what I have done is to pin my fabric in place. I folded it into two because I'll be cutting the front piece all at once, and then I pin my pattern down. The reason we are using pins to hold it in place is so that the pattern does not shift while we are cutting. It's very important. So I'm just going to go ahead and cut out all the pieces that I need, ensuring that I follow curved lines, I follow bends and whatnot. So after cutting, this is what it looks like. We're going to go ahead and notch that place where the mark is, because that's where we are going to be folding the lapel of the jacket, the waterfall aspect of the jacket. So for the back piece, we have our pattern and we're going to be cutting this on fold as well. So after doing this, this is how it looks. The center back will not be divided into two because the back is going to be closed. The back is not going to be open. So you need to ensure that you take note. You need to take note of that so you don't mistakenly cut the back open. And yeah, we are done with that piece. Then for the sleeve, I folded my fabric into two as well because I want to cut the two sleeves at once instead of cutting one first and then cutting the other one later. No, I started to fold my fabric into two, and then I went ahead to cut out my pattern, and this was the pattern I did. This is a long sleeve pattern I did, such that by the time I flex my elbow, that area will not be too tight. I'm going to link that tutorial in my description box as well. Follow all curves while cutting. So yeah, you get it right. After this, now I'm going to go ahead and notch where the front is and where the back is. And what would make me ascertain that is because of the distance from the beginning of the curves, as you can see here, towards the seam area. So the front has the longer one, the back has a shorter one. So that's what's going to make me know where the front is and where the back is. Now that we have all the pieces for the main fabric, I'm going to go ahead and replicate that for the lining fabric, and I'll show you what I did for the sleeve. And I'm going to be creating like a cuff effect, but it's going to be like a faux cuff effect. So what I did was to place another pattern paper on my sleeve, and then I just marked out a border. So guys, this is what it looks like, and I'll explain this to you. So everything is inclusive of seam allowances. So I'm just going to draw out the seam allowance so you guys will know what I'm talking about. I'm going to mark the midline now of the sleeve. That part wasn't necessary, but I just did that. Then from the top where my taple is down to this point is 4.5. You can see the entire length is 5 inches with allowance, but I want the cuff length to be 4 inches. So I'm going to mark 1/2 inch seam allowance right there. I hope you guys understand this explanation, and then just draw out the allowances, connect the points, and then I do the allowances on the side as well. So you can see that it's actually matching with what is on the main sleeve pattern. From that point to this point is going to be 4 inches. The rest is allowance, and I'm going to go ahead and cut this pattern out. This pattern that I just did, this small one I just did, is going to be cut on the black fabric. Like I said, the entire tutorial is a color blocked waterfall blazer like jacket, which is what I'm doing. But when I place this on top at the bottom area, now you can see that it actually matches. We're done with our sleeve. and we're cutting this long one on the cream colored fabric, here. So guys, I'm done cutting it on the lining as well, and please, you need to ensure that it actually matches. That's very, very important, so that by the time you finish sewing, your lining is no longer than your main fabric, or your dress is not looking poofy. So for the sleeve, this is the cuff that I have cut out for it to give the color blocked effect. Now I want to go ahead and show you guys how I transfer my dart. So what I'm going to do is place my back pattern on the fabric, ensure that it's on fold. So what I'm going to do now is to mark this point where my darts begin. So I'm just going to mark the point, the two sides actually, because we're going to be drawing straight lines. So once I'm done with that, I mark the middle of my dart on both sides as well. Just shift it gradually so that, yeah. So after I do that, I do the same thing for the bottom as well. But if you don't want your dart to be too close to the hem, as you can see, I have 1 inch between the end of the dart and the hem. So I'm going to reduce my dart by 1 inch, making a total of 2 inches. So I'm just going to mark 2 inches from the hem, mark it on both sides, because I'm doing this because I don't want my dart to be too close to the hem of the jacket. Now we have 2 inches instead of 1, and I'm going to go ahead and join the points. I'm drawing these straight lines now so that I'll be able to, you know, insert my dart on this. So once we are done, I'm going to go ahead and measure the distance from the center back to my dart, and I have 3.5 inches. So that 3.5 inches, I'm going to mark it on my fabric. I'm going to mark it at the top, I'm going to mark it at the bottom. You can also do that at the middle as well, that is up to you. And then I go ahead and draw a straight line joining those points at the top and the bottom. So now we have our dart line, and then I mark my dart allowance of 1/2 inch on both sides, and I'm going to connect the dart all the way to those points. So from bottom to center, from top to center, from center to top, anyhow. So after I'm done with these guys, I'm going to show you how I was able to transfer my dart from this part to the other side without having to repeat what I just did. So what I'm going to use now is office pins, and I place the office pins at the points where my dart is, at the bottom, at the sides, at the center, and right at the top as well. Once I'm done inserting all the pins, just make sure you push your pins in very well. I'm just going to flip the fabric right over, raise the pins properly, and then where the pins are, I'm going to connect them together to form the dart on the other side. So if you want to do this from the pattern paper to your main fabric, you can go ahead and do that, but the possibility of my fabric shifting was what I did not want, so I went with the initial one instead, and then this for the second dart tracing. So guys, we are done with this piece, this main fabric piece for the jacket, and you can see the dart on both sides. I hope you guys can see that. So yeah, this is the dart right here. I'm going to repeat the same thing for the lining fabric as well, because of course you need to put your dart in both places, and I'll go ahead and show you guys what I'll do next. So I've sewn my darts. Yeah, very, very important, on both pieces. Now what I'm going to do is to, you know, ensure that I sew all the matching fabrics together. So all yellow colored fabrics, I'm going to sew them by their side seams and by their shoulders. And before we sew, I always say this, please use dressmaker pins to pin your fabric in place before you sew. It basically ensures that your sewing is way easier without you having to keep holding your fabric. And why sewing? So I'm just going to sew by 1/2 inch seam allowance. Whatever I do here, I repeat the same thing for the back piece. I also sew the shoulder as well by 1/2 inch seam allowance. So guys, I'm done with all of that. The main fabric is done. the lining fabric is done, and what we are going to do is to notch the side seams. And why we are notching is because of the curve right there, and so that it actually lays nicely on your body by the time you're done sewing. So I'm going to notch the side seam for the front and the back, and what I'm going to do next is to place them on each other with right sides touching. So you need to make sure that all the seams are matching. The shoulder seam of the front and the back is matching, and I'm going to pin that down. So use pins. I work with pins a lot. They make my sewing life way easier. So I pin the shoulders. After ensuring that the shoulder seams match and I've pinned it down, I'm also going to pin this part of the jacket down as well. So I'm going to sew from the center back down to this point, then and also from the center back to the other extreme as well. I've gone ahead to do that. This is how it looks. So before we top stitch this part, I'm going to go ahead and notch the neckline. The neckline of the back is actually curved, and notching it before you top stitch just makes it easier for the sewing process to be done. So I'm going to notch, then go ahead and show you guys how I'm going to top stitch this jacket. So in order to top stitch, I need to ensure that my excess allowance, or the allowance at this place, the 1/2 inch seam allowance, is leaning towards the lining fabric. Please note that, so that your seam doesn't show on the main fabric. And I'm going to be sewing close to this seam by 1/8 of an inch, and ensuring that that seam is towards the lining fabric. Very important. So I've done that now. This is how it looks. Top stitching just ensures that your fabric lays nicely. So this is what I have right here. This is it, guys. You just need to press this down so that it lays really nicely, and that's it, guys, for this part. I'm going to go ahead and pin the rest of the bottom of the jacket down, ensuring that the notches on both the main fabric and the lining fabric matches. That is very important. So we'll be sewing from this point to this point to that point. Ensure that I pin it down. I ensure that the side seams of both the main fabric and the lining fabric matches. I'm going to pin the center back down as well. So we're going to sew from that point to this point, you know, basically just sewing. But I like to start from the center back all the way to the extreme end. Just makes it easier for everything to be aligned properly, and then sew the rest down. So guys, I'm done sewing. This is how it looks like. I ensure that I sew with a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then we're going to be top stitching this part as well. So the same way I did the neckline area all the way to the center front, that's what I'm going to do for this part. Now, since the armhole is the only place that is open, so that's where we're going to use to top stitch, and I ensure that the allowance is flipped towards the lining fabric, and I sew with 1/8 of an inch close to this stitch right here. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm done with that, and we're just going to, you know, flip this inside out or outside in. But I'm going to show you guys what I'm going to do to the edges to ensure that it stays poked out really well. So for this edge now, in order for it to come out nicely, I'm just going to cut off the excess bulk right there. So I'm going to cut it off now, and then notch the midpoint there. And I'm going to repeat the same thing for other places that have edges poking out like that. And I'm using a fabric scissors to poke it out. Please ensure that you hold your fabric scissors tightly so that you don't mistakenly cut your fabric while taking that in. So I'm going to repeat the same thing. You can see how neat it looks, and I'll repeat the same thing for the other side as well. And press my fabric, my jacket. So this is how it looks, guys. This is how my jacket is going to look like. And you can see how the edge came out nicely. If you want to go ahead and do a sleeveless jacket, this is what I'll advise you to do. Since the armhole is the only place that is open, so just flip it with the 1/2 inch seam allowance that it has. So ensure that you flip the lining and the main fabric together, and please pin this down. When you flip, pin it down before you sew. It will actually make the work much more easier for you, so that one doesn't start getting longer than the other. So yeah, pin it down, fold it in, fold the front in, fold the back, the lining inwards as well. So because we're going to be working with sleeves for this, I'm just going to leave it like so, pin it down, and then sew the edges with a 0.25 inch seam allowance just to hold it in place, to make attaching of my sleeve much more easier. I'm done with this now. This is what I have. I'm going to go ahead and, you know, work on my sleeve. So for this sleeve, I ensure that the right side of the main fabric is facing me. You guys, please understand. I ensure that the right side of the main fabric is facing me. And then I'm going to get the cuff that I cut out, and I'm just going to place it at the bottom. And I also ensure that the right side of that cuff was facing me. So the wrong side of the main sleeve is going to touch the right side of the cuff. The wrong side of the main sleeve is going to touch the right side of the cuff. Please understand that. So I'm going to go ahead now and sew with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And once I'm done, this is what I have. We're just going to open that up, and then we're going to top stitch exactly how I showed you how we top stitch earlier. I'm going to top stitch. So this is what it looks like. I use the contrasting thread, so that if I use a black thread, it will show on that fabric. So this is how it looks like, guys. I'm just going to flip that over and then use my dressmaker pins to hold it in place. And I'm going to show you how I was able to, you know, stitch this. What I'm going to do for the top is to fold it in by 1/2 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to do that all the way at the entire top there. Pin it down. Using dressmaker pins just makes my work much more easier, guys, like really. So once I'm done, I sew very, very close to the edge right there. I sew close to the top as well. So basically with just a 1/8 inch seam allowance, that's what I'm just going to do to hold that in place. And whatever I do here, I repeat for this one as well. And then I'm going to show you guys what I do next. So I'm going to flip this over. I've actually sewn the side seam with a 1/2 inch seam allowance on the sleeve. So guys, this is how it looks. You can see how neat, how clean the sewing is. Everything is matching perfectly. The black fabric is matching perfectly. I have sewn with 1/2 inch seam allowance, and I've used a zigzag stitch to conceal the raw edges as well. I'm going to show you how I do that in a next video. Right here, my sleeve is turned over. I ensure that the front is matching the front of the jacket. The front of the sleeve is matching the front of the jacket. And I ensure that the side seam matches, so it aligns. Sorry, I'm going to pin that down, and I will be sewing from that seam all the way to the top, and I'll sew from that seam all the way to the top as well. I noticed that I had a little bit of excess, so I was just careful not to sew close to the shoulder seam. So what I'm going to do with that excess seam allowance, guys, you can turn your mistakes into a design. So I'm just going to pleat this excess that I have here. I'm just going to pleat it down, pin it down, and then go ahead and seal that up by a 0.5 inch seam allowance as I was doing earlier. So guys, I'm done with that now. I'm going to remove this, and then I conceal the raw edges with a zigzag stitch. I repeat the same thing for the other sleeve. So this is what it looks like, guys. This is what I have, and you can go ahead and press your jacket. In order to get this fold, this waterfall effect, your fabric, your jacket, sorry, folding this way, what I did was to use my pattern, my initial pattern, to achieve that. And I got the pattern right here. I folded it like so, ensuring that that notch matches with what I have on the fabric. So it's very, very important, so that it can come out really nicely like I imagined. So this actually came out very, very nice, and I just went ahead to press my jacket really, really hard, so that that gator, that waterfall effect can come out really well. So guys, this is how it looks. This is how my jacket came out. You can see that it actually fits perfectly on my mannequin. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial as much as I enjoyed making this. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe so that you can see more tutorials from Siska Stitches. Thank you for watching, and I'm going to see you guys in my next tutorial. Bye guys.